At our father's hospital bed, my sister made him sign a document while he was sedated. "You'll thank me later," she said. Days after he passed, she showed up in diamonds, laughing. I stayed silent until I handed the nurse's statement to the lawyer, and she realized her name was about to be struck from. Let me tell you exactly what happened. No fluff, no sugarcoating. Just the raw, ugly truth. It was a Saturday afternoon in San Diego, late October. The air smelled like saltwater and dying leaves. I remember sitting by my dad's hospital bed at Sharp Memorial, just listening to the beeping of the machines, watching him breathe slow and uneven. He looked so small in that bed, like the life had already been drained from him. I felt sick to my stomach just sitting there, but I couldn't leave him. That's when Marissa walked in. My sister always had a way of making an entrance, like she owned the room no matter where she was. Her heels clicked against the floor, her gold bracelet glinting in the overhead light. She had on a cream blazer that looked too crisp for a hospital. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked like it might snap. "Hey," she said, her voice flat, eyes darting toward Dad's bed. She barely glanced at me. "Hey," I muttered, not looking up from Dad's face. "Can you give us a minute?" she asked, already pulling some papers out of her bag. I frowned. "Why? What is that?" "Just stuff. Don't worry about it. I've got it covered." She smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was that fake, tight-lipped smile she used when she thought she was smarter than everyone else. I should have pushed back. I should have said no. But I was tired, and I didn't have the energy to argue. So I stood up, mumbled something about needing coffee, and walked out. I paced in the hallway for maybe 15 minutes, trying to shake the sick feeling in my gut. When I came back, the papers were gone. Dad was barely conscious, his mouth slightly open, breathing ragged. I asked Marissa what she had him sign. She just waved it off. "It's nothing. Just some legal stuff. You'll thank me later." Her exact words. I remember them clear as day. A few days later, Dad passed. It was like a punch to the chest. The man who had raised us, who taught me how to ride a bike, who stayed up with me when I had the flu, who showed up to every school play and graduation, even when he was sick. Just gone. The funeral was small, quiet. I tried to hold it together, but Marissa? She was all smiles. I noticed her jewelry first: diamond earrings, a fat diamond bracelet, a huge diamond ring. It wasn't subtle. She looked like she'd just won the damn lottery. She greeted people with a polished smile, thanked them for coming, made small talk like she was hosting a charity gala. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something kept gnawing at me. 2 weeks later, I got the call to meet with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Callahan, in his Mission Valley office. I went in expecting to discuss some of Dad's final wishes, maybe make plans for the house or his small savings. But when Callahan started reading the will, my world stopped. Everything was left to Marissa. The house in Point Loma, the retirement account, the Mustang, the life insurance, every last cent. My name wasn't even mentioned. I sat there frozen, my hands clenched so tight they went numb. I glanced at Marissa, and she didn't even try to hide it. She smiled at me, a smug, satisfied smirk that made my blood boil. "I told you I'd take care of it," she whispered. That was it. That's when I knew she had done something. But I kept quiet. I didn't say a word. I spent the next few nights going through every memory, every conversation, trying to figure out how she pulled this off. And then it hit me, those papers at the hospital. I went back to Sharp Memorial. I asked for Carol, the head nurse from Dad's floor. She was the one who had been there every day, the one who always gave Dad extra blankets and brought him tea when he couldn't swallow solid food. When I asked her about that day, she nodded. "Oh yes, I remember," she said. "Your sister brought in a stack of papers. Your father was barely awake, honey." I told her it wasn't a good idea, but she insisted. Said it was important for the family. Did my dad understand what he was signing? I asked, my voice shaking. Carol looked at me, her face soft with pity. Sweetheart, he couldn't even keep his eyes open. He was sedated, in and out. He didn't know what he was signing. I told her that, but she waved me off. I felt my stomach drop. I asked if she would be willing to write that down, make a formal statement. She hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Of course. It wasn't right, what she did. That statement was my weapon. I took it straight to Mr. Callahan, handed it over without a word. He read it, his eyes going wide. Let me handle this, he said. A few days later, Marissa got served. She called me in a rage. Are you out of your mind? She screamed into the phone. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I know exactly what I'm doing, I said. I'm making sure Dad's real wishes are honored. Not your little scheme. She hung up. And that was just the beginning. After Marissa hung up on me, I sat there in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, heart racing. It was a strange feeling, rage mixed with this weird sense of satisfaction. For the first time, I had something real. Something I could fight back with. But I knew it wouldn't end there. 2 days later, I got a knock at my door. It was a courier. Marissa had sent me a formal letter through her lawyer. Inside was a copy of a counterpetition. She was fighting it. Of course she was. She claimed Dad had full mental capacity when he signed the papers. Claimed the nurse was misinformed and that I was trying to stir up drama because I was jealous and bitter. She called me an unstable sibling with a history of emotional issues. That hit me hard. I sat there reading it, my hands shaking. I had never been in trouble in my life, no arrests, no mental health issues. But Marissa had a way of twisting things. She knew exactly how to make me sound like the problem. I called Mr. Callahan. He told me to stay calm. She's trying to rattle you, he said. Don't let her. But it didn't stop there. Marissa started calling Dad's friends. She told them I was dragging out the probate because I was greedy and vindictive. She made it sound like I was trying to steal from her, like I was dragging Dad's name through the mud. People started pulling away from me. Neighbors who used to wave when they saw me started avoiding eye contact. A couple of Dad's old poker buddies stopped returning my calls. Then came the worst part. I got a call from my landlord. He told me someone had left an anonymous tip, claiming I was running an unlicensed daycare out of my apartment and violating my lease. I wasn't, of course. It was a lie. But the damage was done. My landlord told me I needed to move out by the end of the month. That's when I realized Marissa wasn't just fighting for the estate, she was trying to destroy me. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I found out about the safe deposit box. Dad had a box at a local bank, Wells Fargo, downtown San Diego. I only found out because I went through some of his old paperwork in the garage and saw the receipt. When I called the bank, they told me Marissa had already been there. 2 days after Dad died. She cleaned it out. I asked if they had surveillance footage. The bank manager hesitated, then told me they weren't allowed to give it to me without a subpoena. I told Mr. Callahan. He filed the paperwork. When the footage came back, it showed Marissa walking in, calm and collected, with a key in her hand. She walked out an hour later with a small black box. I didn't know what was in it. But I had a feeling it was important. And then, just when I thought I was finally gaining ground, I got a text from Marissa. Just 5 words, you'll lose. Just wait. After I got that text from Marissa, you'll lose. Just wait. I felt like my heart was in my throat. She wasn't bluffing. A week later, I got a call from Mr. Callahan. He sounded different, nervous, like he wasn't sure how to tell me what he had to say. Listen, he started, I just got an email from Marissa's attorney. They're accusing you of elder abuse. I felt the blood drain from my face. Elder abuse? What the hell is she talking about? He sighed. They're saying you isolated your dad during his last weeks. That you tried to pressure him to change the will. They're claiming you were the one trying to manipulate him. It was like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't even speak. She's got no proof. I finally managed to say. Doesn't matter, he said. She's trying to muddy the waters. If the court thinks there's a chance you were involved in something shady, it gives her leverage. We need to stay ahead of this. I hung up and just sat there, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe this. This wasn't just about the money anymore, this was war. I knew Marissa was ruthless, but I didn't think she'd stoop this low. That night, I barely slept. I kept going over everything in my head. And then I remembered something. The day Dad signed those papers, Carol, the nurse, wasn't the only one who saw what happened. There was a young guy, too. An orderly named Jason. He'd been the one to bring Dad's lunch tray that afternoon. I remembered him because he had tattoos on his arms and always wore bright green sneakers. I called the hospital and asked if he still worked there. They said yes. I drove straight over. When I found him in the cafeteria, I just sat down across from him. Jason, do you remember my dad? Roger, in room 517? He blinked, then nodded. Yeah, I remember him. Quiet guy. Seemed real sick. Do you remember the day my sister brought in papers for him to sign? He frowned. Yeah, that was weird. I mean, the guy couldn't even hold the pen. I had to help steady his hand so he could sign. She told me it was just routine paperwork. My heart skipped a beat. Would you be willing to say that in a statement? He hesitated, looking down at his food. I don't know, man. I don't want to get involved in some family drama. I nodded, but I slid my phone across the table anyway, showing him a picture of my dad from when he was healthy, smiling, holding a beer at a Padres game. He deserved better than this. Jason stared at the picture for a long moment, then sighed. Yeah. Okay. I'll write it down. That was the break I needed. But Marissa wasn't done. 2 days later, I got a notice in the mail. She was trying to file for an emergency injunction to freeze the estate assets until the elder abuse claim was investigated. It felt like she was squeezing me from all sides, trying to drain me of time, money, energy, everything. And then the phone calls started. Blocked numbers. People breathing on the line, then hanging up. Weird emails from fake accounts, things like, "You'll pay for this and watch your back." It felt like I was going crazy. But I stayed quiet. I kept collecting evidence. Jason's statement. The bank footage. The nurse's testimony. Then, one night, I was driving home from work, just a normal Tuesday night, and I noticed a black SUV following me. It stayed with me for miles, all the way from the school where I taught back to my apartment. When I turned into my complex, it didn't follow, but I sat in my car, heart racing, hands shaking, feeling like the walls were closing in. That's when I knew this wasn't just a family dispute anymore. This was something bigger. Marissa wasn't just fighting for the estate. She was fighting for survival, hers and mine. And I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out in one piece. The black SUV following me that night wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning of the end. I knew Marissa was trying to intimidate me, scare me into backing down. She thought she could outsmart me, that I would crumble under the pressure like I always had when we were kids. But this wasn't some playground argument or a family dinner where she could embarrass me in front of everyone. This was Dad's life. His legacy. And I wasn't going to let her bury it in lies. So I leaned in. I went to the police and filed a harassment report, giving them details about the SUV, the phone calls, the emails. They opened an investigation, nothing huge, but enough to make Marissa sweat. Then I sat down with Mr. Callahan and Jason, the orderly, and Carol, the nurse. Together, we built the case brick by brick. Every detail, every signature, every witness, laid out in a timeline that painted a clear, ugly picture of what Marissa had done. But here's the twist I didn't see coming. While digging through Dad's old papers, I found a manila envelope tucked inside a file labeled insurance policies. It was sealed, with my name written on the front in Dad's handwriting. Inside, there was a handwritten letter. It said, "If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I trust you to do the right thing. I never wanted to leave Marissa out of my will, but I didn't trust her with everything. There's another account, at Coastal Credit Union, under your name and mine. The code is your birthday. That money is for you. Use it wisely. Love, Dad." I sat there, reading it over and over, tears in my eyes. Dad had known. Maybe not everything, but something. The next day, I went to the bank. When I gave them the account number and the code, they pulled up the details. My heart nearly stopped. There was over $250,000 in that account. Marissa had no idea it existed. I took a breath and did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. If she wanted a war, I was going to give her one. The investigator, his name was Tony, a gruff guy with a mustache and a laugh like sandpaper, dug deep. And what he found was worse than I imagined. Marissa wasn't just scheming for Dad's estate. She was drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, second mortgage on her La Jolla house, private loans with sky-high interest rates. She was funneling money from her husband's business, and she had been named in a pending fraud investigation tied to a local real estate scam. Her diamonds? Leased. Her car? Under someone else's name. Everything about her life was a house of cards. And I had the matches. When we went to court, Marissa walked in like she always did, chin high, looking polished, like she was about to give a TED talk. Her lawyer rattled off a bunch of nonsense about family loyalty, misunderstandings, and he said she said. Then it was my turn. Mr. Callahan laid it all out, Carol's testimony, Jason's statement, the bank footage of Marissa sneaking out with the safe deposit box, the harassment reports, the police file, and the letter from Dad. And then I stood up, holding the envelope. "My father didn't trust her," I said, my voice steady. "And now you know why." The judge's face hardened as he listened. Marissa kept glancing at her lawyer, panic rising in her eyes. And then, the final blow, Tony, the private investigator, took the stand and revealed the financial mess Marissa had been hiding. Fraud. Debt. The scam investigation. Marissa's lawyer looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. The judge ruled in my favor. Dad's will was declared invalid due to undue influence and lack of capacity. The assets were divided evenly between me and Marissa, on paper. But by then, Marissa's debts and legal fees had swallowed her share whole. She had to sell the La Jolla house. The diamonds? Repossessed. The car? Gone. Her husband filed for divorce after learning about the fraud investigation. And the fraud case? The authorities opened a formal investigation. She's facing charges now. As for me, I sold Dad's Mustang, paid off my student loans, and put the rest into savings. I kept the letter from Dad in a frame on my desk. But I won't lie and say I walked away clean. The fight left scars. I don't sleep well most nights. I don't trust easily anymore. And I'll always wonder what could have been if Marissa hadn't been so greedy. But at least Dad's story was told. And Marissa? She's a cautionary tale now. Not just to me, but to anyone who thinks they can manipulate, lie, and steal their way to the top. Because eventually, the truth will come out. And when it does, it's brutal. Just like it was for her.